Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. Chepe Mariscal, Jose Chepe Mariscal, takes his fight on short notice, fighting Trevor Peak, who was supposed to fight Victor Martinez. Chepe is 30 years old. He's got a record of 13-6, and he's giving up 3 inches of height but no reach to 28-year-old Trevor Peak, who has a record of 8-0. Peak, I'll start with him. He's an easy fighter to break down. He's a fucking savage brawler. He's 8-0 with 8 knockouts. Most of those come in round 1, but he's also gotten at least 1 in round 2 and 1 in round 3. He beat this guy Ben Brewer, who was a solid veteran, had taken some time off or retired or whatever, I think, but then came back into the sport. Still, though, he had a damn good resume at the time, and Trevor Peak got by him. Outlasted him and got him out of there in round 3. It was very impressive. His most impressive win comes in the Contender Series against Malik Lewis. That was his round 2 finish. Malik almost had him out of there, almost killed him in round 1. It wasn't looking good at all, but somehow Trevor Peak survived and again outlasted and outworked his opponent and TKO'd him in round 2. Guy's a savage. And he's also shown some good results in round 1. He knocked out Kama Worthy and Eric Gonzalez in the UFC. Well, just Eric Gonzalez in the UFC. He knocked out Kama Worthy before he got to the UFC. And Kama, if you don't remember, was in the UFC a year or 2 years ago. Trevor Peak knocked both those guys out in the final seconds, I believe, of round 1. It was just like he had this moment, certainly had it against Kama, where he said, fuck it, I think I want to do this in round 1. With like 10 seconds left, went forward and got it. He's a brawler, but he's got power, and I think a decent chin on him, which makes for a great fucking brawler. So, Trevor Peak, I expect a lot of his wins, all of his wins really, to look somewhat similar until he loses. Then maybe things will change up. And to be honest, I do think it won't be long before he loses. And to be even more honest, I would have picked Chepe Mariscal to win this fight. Well, I am picking him to win this fight. If you want me to just give you my fucking answer right now, I lean towards Mariscal, but my heart's not into it. I'm not betting on it. But if he was on a full camp here, with a full camp, I would definitely pick him to beat Trevor Peak. Because I just think Trevor Peak, it won't be long before he's exposed by a more technical, versatile fighter, and he's the one that doesn't last. You know, starts to fall apart. The wheels come off. I'm not saying he's going to get finished late, although that's certainly a possibility, but he's gonna fall off as the fight goes on, lose down the stretch. Mariscal, he's a guy that is a versatile fighter, very versatile fighter. I like him on the feet. He can definitely bang, and on the ground, even though he's not the biggest submission threat, he's a very good, skilled jiu-jitsu fighter. I know because I've seen him fight in very close fight with Pat Sabatini, who was all over him, as you might imagine, and he won that fight by split decision. And Bryce Mitchell was all over him and beat him by decision. Bryce was dominating him for most of the fight until the end, where, in my opinion, Mariscal came back and won the 3rd round, although it was pretty close, to be honest. But he had those guys. Those guys had him in arm bars, heel hooks, multiple submissions. And those are obviously elite threats, and he didn't get tapped. He has been TKO'd, though. I should get into that. He's got a 13-6 record, 6 losses, and I don't know why I'm talking about his submission defense. The TKO and the KO is what is relevant here against Trevor Peak. His 3 losses, all 6 of his losses are to good fighters. All 6 of them. 5 of them have been in the UFC, and 1 guy is lurking around in the LFA right now. But he's a good fighter. He's got 3 by TKO, 3 losses by TKO, and only 1 of them is a legit knockout. He was separated from his senses by Joe Anderson Brito, who threw a kick and a big combination and caught him with a big left hook that knocked him dead. But the other 2 losses, he wasn't knocked out. He lost to Steve Garcia, who certainly beat him up, and I'm sure he moved his brain around a little bit, but he wasn't out, and that was actually kind of a bad stoppage. And Gregor Gillespie beat him by, as you can imagine, a TKO from the back mount. Just went right through him like Gregor Gillespie does and pounded the shit out of him. But he wasn't unconscious in that one either. I bring in all that up because I do think losing his consciousness is what's going to lose him this fight against Trevor Peak. That's really Peak, at least on paper, his only path to victory. So he's only been separated from his senses once, and it was by Joe Anderson Brito. Not to say he can't get rocked, and he's certainly the smaller man here. And between the two of them, one of them's got the harder punch, and it's Trevor Peak. So he's got that going against him. But Mariscal is a very skilled fighter on the feet and on the ground. He's gotten some solid wins, as I mentioned. He beat Pat Sabatini by split decision, beat Yusuf Zalal by split decision. Here, I think he can still, on short notice, he can still outlast Trevor Peak and school him down the stretch. And that's what I'm picking to happen. I think Mariscal will win, but at even money, I don't think it enough to even bet on it. You know, I'm just staying away from this one altogether. There are no prop bets available. I will look into those because, you know, I think at least Trevor Peak, he can isolate his path to victory down to one path there. And for Mariscal, if the numbers are juicy for him, finishing him down the stretch or even the decision line, that's how I think it would go. I don't think Mariscal is going to go through Trevor Peak in round one. I think if he wins, it's going to be him surviving round one and then figuring him out along the way. But still, Chepe is a very versatile fighter. I really like him. He's been on my radar for some time now. And even though it's on very, very, very short notice, I'm happy to see him in the UFC. But because it's on very, very, very short notice, I can't bet on him. So that's my take. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos. By the way, I guess I would lean towards Peak by knockout in round one if he was to get the knockout. I don't know if I made that clear. All that horse shit.